Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm George the Antique Nomad and I am glad to have you here. This is my eBay live haul and this goes out first to my level 2 members because they pay to help sponsor it, and I thank you so much for my members who do that. I do release this content to everybody because I want everybody to have the information that I have about things, but I do let the level 2 members see it first because they pay for the privilege, and that way they get to see it as it drops live on eBay. What we're going to do tonight is have 20 interesting items, do some show and tell, talk about what makes them fun, interesting, collectible, noteworthy, and then while you watch, you will be able to go to eBay and immediately take a look at it, peruse it, buy it if you're interested, bid on it if you're interested, or just follow along and see what the market has to say about these items. It's a fun way to be able to bring things to you and bring some extra content to everyone. So thanks again to my members for helping provide that, and let's see what we have put aside. The first item, I showed this if you follow the thrift battle on Primetime Treasure Hunter. This was one of my entries into that. I was up against Danny of the Niche Lady, and it was a real knockdown drag out. She brought really cool, interesting things, and I tried to as well. And this was one of the items I brought. This looks like it could have been made yesterday, especially because it is in a more contemporary stand. However, these were made starting in 1966 by a fellow named Broom and his wife. They married in 1966, and he was already a wildlife artist, and she got him interested in enamel on copper, which was a new way of doing things. Enamel is essentially paint suspended in glass, and so it's similar to painting, but you're able to fire it on in a kiln or some sort of a furnace and melt it together onto the copper. You'll see on the edge here, this is copper, and a lot of people did this in the 1960s and 70s. It was particularly Sasha Brastoff, I think was the progenitor of this back in the early 60s, and the Brooms lived on the flyway, the Mississippi flyway, where all of the migratory birds go, and of course there's birds that stay locally. This one looks like it stayed locally because this little black-capped chickadee is standing in snow. I think they're very pretty. It's a nice bridge between modernism and naturalism. So if you're a modernist but you like nature, this is something that might be right up your alley. You can see on the edge here a little bit where the copper is. It's sandwiched between the enameling. They also enameled the back, and Broom's easy to recognize if it's in good condition because there's the signature, B-R-U-M-M. This is a pretty piece. I like the holder it came in. This is going to go out and it should sell, from what I've seen, in the $50 to $60 range. This is a 6-inch plate, and I think this holder, even though it is more contemporary, is pretty attractive with it. So I suspect that this will fly away to a nice new home. But it's been fun to have it, and I'm glad to be showing and listing it now. The next item that we have is right next to me here, and I wore a kind of plain shirt because even though obviously I wouldn't be wearing this jewelry, I wanted it to show so that you can see how it would look against fabric. So hopefully you get a little bit of the idea there, the way it dangles. I'm going to try to hold it up a little closer and give you a better look at it. These are glass beads, but they look like tortoiseshell. This one's a little bit backwards. Let me see if I can get that to lay right. There we go. These are referred to as Lavaliers. Now this one appears to be an Art Deco piece. Let me see if I can get it to go stably here. The nice thing about Lavaliers, there we go, is that they swing around. The problem for filming is that they swing around. But when you're wearing it, it's really great because it's got this nice drape to it. These were popular with the flappers, and you can tell this is about a 1920 vintage piece because of that, the shape of that hoop that's holding the pendant on. And then it's got an interesting chain with bars and this triangle that hold it out, and you'll see more of the bars as we go there. It would certainly look better on a lovely neck as opposed to against my rather used hands that have been doing a lot of stuff for an estate sale. But here we go where you can see it a little better. Isn't that pretty? I love the faux tortoise in the glasswork. It's nice that it's faux because real tortoise shell is controversial and oftentimes not able to be sold. So it's nice that these are glass. Lavalier is a very pretty French name. Basically, it means that it dangles. And I just think this is a really special looking piece. This particular one, they were very popular starting about 1910. The Gibson girls really like this delicate fine jewelry like this. And this particular one is going to be something I will expect would probably sell again in probably a $45 to $50 range. We're going to let the market tell us about that and see where it goes. It is a brass chain. This is probably a 10 karat gold setting. It's not something I've had a chance to test, but it has that mellowness of 10 karat gold. So I thought that was very pretty, and I'm curious to see who will end up with that. Now, our third item, I also put this on the thrift battle. I'm going to show it the same way I showed it there, because at first you look at it and you think it's rather unremarkable, especially because I'm going to show you the butt end first. Why would I show you the butt end? Well, looks like, what, a pig's tail maybe? It's a little bit clunky and funky and a little bit scraped up. I usually save for things that are in really good condition, but here is the reason that this is significant. Who do we have here but Adolf Hitler? Now, there is some discussion over whether eBay will allow this listing to stay up, but it is also true that eBay often sells the Hitler skunks from the same era, because these were not meant to lionize Hitler. These were made in America, and the point of this one was to save for victory and make him squeal. This was something put out about 1942, and it's made of paper mache, and the point of this was to have you save money for war bonds. Now, it's not in terrific condition at the top. It's got a few little cracks. These were not meant to last. The hope was that we would win the war and it would be over, which we did. And you see it doesn't have its trap on the bottom, but these are very hard to find. When you look at WorthPoint, they have comparables as high as $700, although typically they seem to sell in a $150 to $200 range. I found this in an estate, and the grandparents of the people having the estate had this, and somehow they didn't throw it away and they did keep it, and here it is for us to have today. This is a sort of thing that it would be appropriate, not so much for a piggy bank collector, although it's certainly an interesting piggy bank if you are a collector of such. It's really more about historical memorabilia and people who are into militaria, Second World War, that sort of thing. That's who your collector is for this type of a piece. And I've been doing this 30 years. This is the first time I've ever seen or owned one. I've seen the skunks and had them on a few occasions. They are a little more common, and you see those on eBay all the time. So we're going to give this a try, and hopefully it will be out there for you to peruse and see how the market responds to that. eBay, of course, is very reluctant and refuses to have anything that is Nazi swastika and that sort of thing listed on their site. And well, I have to say, I understand from the standpoint of that's a very, very hurtful thing to a lot of people. I also believe in preservation of history, so I'm kind of two minds about that. But I do believe that this is okay to sell, and I'm going to give it a try. The next items that we have here are cufflinks in a blue box. And some of you might recognize the powder blue box right away because it is a color that is typically associated with Wedgwood Jasperware. And that's what we have here. This is a set that I do not believe has ever been out of its original box. They appear to have never been worn. These would have been made sometime about 1970. In the 1960s, there were a lot of, it was part of the hippie ethos. People started making their own jewelry. They started making jewelry out of things that were not glass and not necessarily the typical things that people had done before. And a lot of the ceramic companies caught on to that and started making pieces as well. Francoma made some jewelry. Treasure Craft made a tiki god necklace. I have the good fortune to have one. And Wedgwood made pins and little brooches, but they also made this pair of cufflinks with the anchor. I think they're very attractive. And now, not everybody wears French cuff shirts anymore, but some people do. And cufflinks, I get requests every show because they're not that easy to find on the open market, and people like the older ones. I think that the use of the Jasperware really gives these a nice element. And of course, Jasperware has been around since the early 1800s. The Wedgwood family in England came up with the idea of doing basically a cameo relief where they have the white slip on top of the blue. And these are just in really perfect condition in the original box. So that should be fun for people to see, and I have a hunch that they will sell for a fairly reasonable price, because there is Wedgwood jewelry out there, and even though the cufflinks are a little more unusual, it's not the sort of thing that is so rare that it should sell for a high price. So I think someone will have fun with that because they are usable and accessible. Well, while we're on the Second World War vibe here, I wanted to show this because this is the next item that will be up for bid. And again, you can go to eBay while these listings are active and follow them and see how these do in the market. This is a bayonet. It might have been used on the typical Army issue Springfield rifle. They made different ones that fit various rifles. This particular one, though, what I find entertaining to show on this that I'll hold up for you. Look at the initials. It says AFH, and then there's a little, like a fuselage, the bomb, and then US underneath. AFH, you think, what does that mean? American Fighting Heroes or Army something something? Well, no, it actually means American Fork and Hoe. We forget that at the beginning of World War II, we were not really planning on being in the war. We were building up our defenses, but there was a big sentiment that we should stay out of the war because of what happened in World War I. And so we were caught a little bit off guard. And all of a sudden, everything had to be turned into war production to catch up. American Fork and Hoe got a contract to make bayonets because they made pitchforks and hoes and lawn stuff. So they had metal and they knew how to do metal work. So they were one of the companies that made these bayonets. And it's a particular type of blade because you can see where it's got some variation in the texture here, and that is deliberate. What's important about a nice old bayonet like this is condition. You can see that the handle is in good shape. The screw is not loose. There's no chipping on the grip. It has the button to click on and off of the rifle, so it will clamp in. It has the scabbard. It also has the belt clip for the scabbard, which is important because these were not just fixed onto guns. These were something that you would actually be able to carry with you in case you were involved in hand-to-hand combat. And the other thing is that when you put it in, I think if I do it the right way, it will go. It clicks right into place, and then the button that releases it works easily. It could be oiled, it'd work even more easily. But this has sat in a collection for many, many years. It was likely, again, somebody's grandparents, somebody's granddad in the Second World War had this, and they hung on to it. And now it is time for it to be released to the open market. You also want to look at the butt end for condition to make sure that there isn't anything here that would keep it from clipping onto a rifle. Now, there are various varieties of these, and I must be truthful. I am not studied enough in military cutlery to tell you which of the many varieties these are. So I'm hoping that by posting good pictures, the market will be able to tell which variety this is, because the values are all over the place. This could sell for $50, it could sell for $150. So we're going to start it out at a relatively low price and see where it goes, and we'll learn something in the process. The bayonets we see the most frequently in the marketplace that are kind of the starter collectible are from Czechoslovakia, and the reason a lot of them say Czechoslovakia is that that country got a lot of bayonets after the Second World War and re-stamped them with their country mark on the base there. The American ones are definitely more collectible and more desirable. All right, so I wanted to show some more jewelry, but this isn't so interesting because it's jewelry as because of the hole in the center. So hopefully you'll be able to see this. See that little place that's sort of reflecting and refracting light in the middle, and there it is on this side? That spot makes this a stanhope. And when you see little crosses particularly, but they did these in other things, and they're not always just jewelry, sometimes they are little sewing implements, sometimes they're other little doodads, mainly done as tourist pieces. But a stanhope is named for a fellow in England who came up with the idea. You look into this little piece, and let me get it the right way. I wish I could show you this in a way that you could see it, but when you look in there, this one has a portrait of the Last Supper, and that's what that little glass is for. It's a little magnifying lens. These became very popular in England in the Victorian period, and then the craze spread all over the place. I've seen them with attractions from Israel in them. I've seen lots of American attractions. Every so often, not in the crosses obviously, you'll see them where they are nudes or risque. This one's in pretty good shape. It's got a little bit of a nick down at the bottom here, but it's fun, it's cute, it's interesting. There are collectors who just love anything with a stanhope. The most common ones have the Lord's Prayer in them, so the fact that this actually has a picture of the Last Supper rather than a copy of the Lord's Prayer is something that makes it a little more interesting, and we will see what the market thinks of that. I suspect it'll sell in the $20 range. But I just think they're really neat, and it's a fun thing for you to know about, because when you're going through little piles from desk drawers and that sorts of thing, you do have an opportunity to find those. I've found them on many occasions when I'm going through an estate sale, and oftentimes the people don't look at it closely enough to know, so it might be on the $2 jewelry table, for example. I wanted to bring this out next. This is by a company called John Wright Incorporated, and we know that because in this case it still has its original label on the bottom, which is nice. I'm not sure how readable that will be. Yeah, there we go, John Wright Inc. Copyrighted. And this particular piece is from about 1950. This one is, all of their stuff was die cast. This little hook here where my thumb is what makes it a bottle opener. It was for the old pop top bottles, bottle opener. You might even be able to pierce a can with it, but this would have been for opening the old cone top beer bottles or that sort of thing. And they did them in a lot of different characters. John Wright in particular was a little better quality. They tended to paint theirs, so they weren't just plain cast iron, which we see quite a lot. It actually has a lot of nice painted detail. You can see on the reverse here, the sculpting is pretty good. Even the way that his pants sort of bag up in the back, which is the way that things really happen when you're out there mucking around. He is pulling in a fishing net. I think you can see that. And this particular piece is something that really surprised me. I thought, well, it's a neat thing. I like bottle openers, but I'd never seen this particular one, and I thought, well, you know, it might be a $20 or $30 item. Well, it turns out they're selling for as much as $75 and $85 online, so I'm curious to see where this guy goes. He's the Old Salt, and I suspect that somebody who has a barware collection or who collects things related to nautical items. We get a lot of Northeasterners who come down for the shows in Florida, for example, who collect this sort of thing. He's got good detail, and the best part is he's scarcely been used. Usually they're pretty chipped up around here because they got used here and the paint wore off. But this guy, I think he just sat on the shelf and has probably never been used. So that was a fun thing for me to bring out for you. I did bring jewelry tonight. I know people enjoy jewelry, and I'm finding that even men are responding to costume jewelry in terms of understanding it and knowing what it is that's appealing, even if it's not something that they want, but the ladies sure like it. And this is a very good example to show you, because this one is... Let me see if I can get that white page behind it so that maybe the color will pop a little bit more, because it's really a beautiful color. There we go. I think that's a little more like it. Yes, this is good because you can see the texturing in the stones. Those oval stones with the flat top, and they don't look flat because of the texturing. The texturing's on the back, but if you look at it from this side, let's hope we can get it back into focus here. Come to me, focus. Okay, there we go. These stones here are flat on top, but they're rounded, and those are called cabochons. That's what that shape is, and that's true in fine jewelry as well as costume jewelry, but these cabochons have this interesting texturing, and that is why we know, along with the stacked construction, see how it's several layers, and on the back, if it will come in, you may see that some of the finish, some of the gold puddles up a little. It's not completely smooth. All of those are hallmarks of what is euphemistically called Juliana jewelry. Now, everybody likes to talk about Juliana, but Juliana is just one of many trade names that was used by a company called D&E, or DeLizza and Elster. And DeLizza and Elster were out of Rhode Island. I'm going to put it up to my shirt here. Let's see, on this side, so that maybe you'll get an idea of the rise of it and how much it really does stick up three-dimensionally. The DeLizza and Elster company was based in Rhode Island. Most of the costume jewelry was made in Rhode Island. And it's interesting because it was a seasonal business. They would produce for 3 seasons plus holiday, and then the employees would have all summer off and have to figure out some other way to make a living. But D&E was in production for several decades, but in 1967 they came out with a line that they called Juliana, which was named after DeLizza's mother. And Juliana was found on some of the cards. It's never marked that. They did not mark their stuff because they produced for home party companies like Terra. They also produced for other jewelry manufacturers, and they did a lot of private label stuff that was sold for stores that did not want a manufacturer name on it. So as a result, you see a lot of pieces of theirs that are unmarked, and you really kind of have to know what you're looking for. And that's why these construction techniques I'm talking about are helpful for identification. This is a pretty piece. It's not gigantic. Some Juliana is really huge. They would have done entire sets. I'm sure that somewhere there is a necklace, a bracelet, and a pair of earrings that have these same textured stones. But they're just really pretty, and they catch the light really nicely. I think this is probably a $35 to $45 piece, and we're going to find out. Now, I really enjoy this next one because I had never seen something like this before, and they are out there, but they're not super common. When I was a kid in school, I remember it was a big deal if you needed a break, you told the teacher, I really need to sharpen my pencil, and then you could get up and walk up to the front of the class and sharpen your pencil and make a bunch of noise in front of everybody, and it was all legit, and you got to get away from your desk for a minute. So breaking the lead from your pencil was something that we all did with regularity. Well, the pencil sharpener said APSCO on it. As a kid, I never thought anything about APSCO. And as an antique dealer, I hadn't really thought about APSCO either, although pencil sharpeners are more interesting to people now. But then I saw this, and now I understand where APSCO comes from. It is the U.S. Automatic Pencil Sharpener, APS Company. Automatic Pencil Sharpener. You can see right there it says Automatic Pencil Sharpener Company Incorporated, and it's got a bunch of patent dates. The latest one, I believe, on this one is 1907. And the automatic pencil sharpener was a pretty cool thing because you would you turn the blade and it makes this little cap on the top rotate, and every time it rotates, the pencil gets another bevel taken out of it. So you can see that's how it works. It's a little different than what we do now, where they have a cylinder where they spin it out. But this was the original version of the automatic pencil sharpener. The important thing on this is that it's got really strong graphics, they're not worn out, and that it works. It probably could use some oiling. I'll show you the mechanics of it on the top there. There's the top gear that turns around and sharpens the pencil. Now, the only thing missing from this one, down here would have been the drawer the shavings went into. These are often gone on these. And in the marketplace, that does make a difference. If you can find one with the original drawer, they can sell for $150. This particular one without the original drawer is likely to sell for somewhere around half of that, but that's still a pretty good number for a pencil sharpener, I think. And it's just such a neat looking thing. And that got me all excited. So I decided I wanted to put this out because I thought it'd be fun to show all of you something a little different, where some utilitarian thing we take for granted, well, it came from somewhere, and this is where it came from. So that will be fun, and the best part is it does work. It will sharpen your pencil, although the way it does it is it cuts sections off of it, so you end up with sort of this weird beveling. It's almost like you whittled the thing. But hey, you know, it was a lot better than having to whittle the thing, which is what they had to do before. So we're kind of bouncing back and forth between boudoir items and other sorts of things because it's fun to present a whole lot of different variety, and that's what I really like to do when I do these eBay listings. So this next piece is this very stylish little Art Deco design. Streamlined modern, straight out of the 1930s. Great green color, just love the style. This should date to sometime between about 1930 and 1935. And when you look at it, it will probably be too small for you to see, but it does have a mark, and the mark is Trésor. This is a compact. You see the mirror. You can see the reflection of, well, the computer in the mirror. And if I put it up to the light, you get a big shiny glare, so I'll try not to do that too much. Trésor was a company that originally was based on in Newport, Rhode Island again, and New York, and they were a company that made a lot of powders and cosmetics and things for women. But then the drugstore chains started to get big, and they started making their own stuff. So Trésor figured out, well, to stay in business, we better do something of our own. And what they realized, because they'd been in the powder and rouge business, is that women's compacts, which really took off in the 19-teens, women went into the workforce during the First World War in a way that really hadn't been seen before. And there started to be electric lighting. And so a lot of women who hadn't worn makeup before started to wear makeup because you could see skin blemishes and things in this bright light. And they didn't like that very well. So they put on, as my mother called it, her war paint. And so then they had the powder and the rouge put in these sort of clumsy brass boxes that were a lot bigger than this and kind of clunky to carry around. And Trésor came up with the idea that they would make something that was more stylish and fit in a smaller pocket or your purse. And the other thing they came up with that they really were the market leader on is this sliding drawer, because they realized that what was happening is people were putting as much rouge as powder into compacts, and women needed a little rouge and a lot more powder. And the rouge and the powder was getting mixed together and making a big old mess. And so this sliding drawer meant that your powder stayed in one place and your rouge stayed in another. Treasure also was involved with making powder puffs. So this would have originally had a puff, which is gone. The condition on this overall is very good. It's got a nice turned metal back. That's why you see this, the machine would turn, and that's where you get this chrome with this sort of aspect of it where it seems like it moves around when you look at it. There is just a little bit of tarnishing in the lower corner. So for full disclosure, I need to point that out to you. But it's a really cute piece. Compacts have proven, I always like compacts, and it's proven that YouTube viewers really enjoy compacts. So I thought I would bring this one to you, and we will list it now and see what happens with it. But I think it's very pretty, and I imagine it'll sell somewhere in the $30 range. In fact, I think I have a buy it now on that one. Some of these items I do a buy it now, and some I just leave open to bid. I figure that I want some things to be available for you to purchase right away, and some things, honestly, I want to test the market and see where it goes to, and so we can have fun together seeing how that is. All right, so we still have another 10 items left to go. I'm having a lot of fun doing this, and we will show you the next one. This one is a belt buckle, and it says mass. And, well, I'm not sure that that would translate the same way if you wore it today. This actually was intended to be for the Massachusetts Regiment. Now, it's a little thinner, in my opinion, than we would see in the Civil War, and I have not seen anyone claim these to be Civil War. Instead, what I've read is the belief that they may have started as early as the Western wars against the Indians, but in all likelihood, and especially from the house that this came from, this likely would have been worn during the Spanish-American War. It is brass. It is from the Massachusetts State Militia, and it's in really good condition. It doesn't have any real bends or any missing parts. I have not polished it. You should never polish brass or copper that's old like this. If you need to clean it up, you should read about what safe ways there are to do. If you use Brasso or something, you will just ruin this stuff. It'll be shiny bright, but it's not supposed to be. It should have the patina of age and be left alone. And this one definitely does. I have not seen one of these sell recently online. I've seen one or two offered, and they wanted very high prices, but I really don't think their identification was right. One of them was claiming it was Civil War era. I do not believe that to be the case. So we're going to just see what happens with this, but I think it's a pretty cool thing. And you definitely are not going to find a lot of them in circulation at this point. So that will be some sort of entertainment and value to someone, probably a militaria collector again. We're doing lovely boudoir items and military stuff tonight, it seems like. But actually the theme right now is buckles, and I'm going to present another buckle next. This one is a lot newer. You can tell because it's very shiny, and I don't usually do newer buckles, but this one dates to about 1990, or the late 80s, I should say, because I'm selling it for my friend Bill, who is 93 years old, and he used to work in the coal industry, and one of the things they used was Gulf explosives, because that was one of the things they used to blow stuff up to be able to get down into the mines. This one has never been used. This was given to him as a presentation piece shortly before he retired. He never wore it. No one has ever worn it. But it's got that great Gulf oil logo. And for Petroliana collectors, Gulf is one of the more desirable names. It's the orange and blue is just really distinctive. And I've looked for these. I have not seen one that advertises the explosives. I've seen others that are just the Gulf logo. And because it's Gulf, and because it's nicely done, I suspect that this will probably sell in, again, maybe the $30 to $40 range. So we will find out, and then my very kind elderly friend will have a nice pocket of money which he can use to go to his favorite steakhouse. All right, so let's do something pretty, and if I'm able to, we'll have some fun with it. I'm not sure how the lighting will allow me to do this, but let's start by showing it to you in the usual form. This is Fenton, and this is Custard Glass. It's a Fenton bird. It's all hand-painted. They use something that's almost like a coralline here, so it has some texture in these flowers, and the nose is painted similarly. It's from the early 1970s. There is the Fenton label. Fenton used this paper label in the mid-20th century before they marked everything. This piece does not have the Fenton oval. They started doing that in 1964 on some pieces, but they didn't do it on all their pieces until later. This one is one of the earlier hand-painted ones. It has the signature of Linda Bules, B-U-L-E-S. We know it's earlier because the earlier Fenton pieces, they had them do a full signature with their first and last name. It was later determined, I think for the security of the employees and also to make it faster and more expedient for production, that they would use only their first initial and their last name. So when you see full signature, that's harder to find. And Linda Bules is not one of the signatures that comes up that often. And there's starting to be a premium for certain signatures of Fenton artists, because some produced for shorter periods of time, some were considered more skilled at the art, etc. Linda Bules did not produce for Fenton for a very long time. But the great thing is this is Custard Glass, so let's see if we can do what we all enjoy these days and shine a black light on it. I'm not sure how much this is going to show. Oh yeah, this will show pretty nicely actually, at least from my side. Can I get it to show on your side? Well, it's just glowing like crazy on the side that you can't see, darn it. Let me turn it around and see if maybe it will catch it better. From the side I'm looking at it, as bright as it can be, and from your perspective, you're not getting it at all. So let me see if I can turn this light off, just briefly. I'm not sure what this will do for the focus, so this is an experiment, folks. Okay, well, we're still in focus. Now let's see if that shows a little better. Make it glow. Okay, well, you're getting a little of the green. I'm going to try turning off one more light here, if I can. Just one moment. Well, we'll turn it away at least. Okay, yeah, we lost our focus, but now I think you can see a little bit better the glow. I think you're going to have to take my word for it. I have a picture in the listing where it really, really glows, and it looks really great, and it is funny to me how black light is just like this. Even my shirt is glowing. Well, you will have to take a look online to really get the full effect of this, because it is hard to do in a room where you're actually using lighting, and I do have to keep the lighting on so that you can see what's going on here. But it does glow very pretty. It's a very deep green. Fenton did use a fair amount of uranium salt in their batches, and that's why it really glows nicely. And it's a pretty bird. And pretty bird is probably worth about $25. So I believe there is a buy it now available if you like that. And I like Fenton. I always have. I have friends in the business who were the head of Fenton Finders and wrote several books and traveled to Fenton and knew all of the people and got them to come out and do seminars, so I got to meet George Fenton, and so I have a soft spot in my heart for their glass. They really did make some really beautiful things. The next item I have here is just a little piece of wood. Let's turn this other light back on and get a little more light on the subject here. There we are. That should make it easier. Okay. I think you can see the detail in this. I'll hold my hand up so we can try to get it in better focus. And come back. There we go. That's a little clearer. This is around, and it says 1776 to 1876. This is from the Philadelphia World's Fair. It was the first World's Fair held in the United States. And it was held to, obviously, celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. It was significant as World's Fairs go, not just because it was the first in the United States, but because it was the first that had multiple buildings. It was the first that had a building devoted strictly to the things that women did, and this was at the beginning of the suffragette movement, so that was quite significant. And it was just west of Fairmount Park. One of the buildings is still standing. It is now the Please Touch Me Museum and the University of Arts in Philadelphia. On the back, there's a description of the event itself and when it's taking place. Fairmount Park, Philadelphia, it says, and this opened on May 10th of 1876, and Ulysses S. Grant, who was still president, came and opened the fair, and it did very well. Over 10 million people came. It also showed the dawning of American industry. There was a lot of concern when the fair was held that the foreign countries wouldn't participate, and 35 foreign countries did participate. So then the concern became that, oh, our domestic manufacturers are not going to look very good by comparison to some of these established foreign companies, so we've got to make sure we show the very best of American production. So something like 10,000 different companies. Bear in mind, this is before big corporations dominated things, so 10,000 little different companies showed at the Philadelphia World's Fair. This is made of wood, and it's basically just a little token. I started to call it a medallion, but it's not metal, and that creates a little bit of confusion, so we'll just call it a wood round. These are something that a lot of tourists had at the time, and a lot of them have been thrown away, rotted away, were burned up in a fire, and so you don't see them that often. I suspect it's going to sell in the $35 to $40 range. And I am a World's Fair collector. Now, I have never collected, excuse me, get comfortable here. I've never collected back into the 1876 World's Fair, but I know there are people who do. It was a big deal at the time, and it'll be a fun thing for somebody to show off now. And while we're on that subject, this could be fun to make focus, but I really wanted to show it because this is a coin that a lot of people have never seen. Oh, the focus is actually behaving pretty well. Good. Let's see if we can get any closer. I think we might have to... There we go. Now you're getting a better look. Let me get as close as I can for you. You can see all the ink stains on my hands. Had an estate sale today. This is an 1832 American halfpenny. If you see there, and I'll turn it over so I think, or maybe I have it the right way. Nope, it's upside down. Let's go this way. There you go. Now you can see United States of America half cent. A lot of people don't realize that we made coins that were worth half of a penny. Nowadays, this is about nickels worth of copper, so they would never do anything like this. It's probably the size almost of a quarter. This one's in pretty good condition. I would say it's what we call very fine in the details. Coins are rated on a scale of good to extra fine, and then various levels of uncirculated if they've never been touched. This one does have a blemish here, however, and so even though the details are very fine, it will probably be downgraded to about good or very good in the eyes of the collectors because that is some sort of scratching or scraping. However, these are very uncommon. They made exactly 51,000 of these. Nowadays, we make something like pennies, we make something on the order of 4 to 6 billion per year. So 51,000 is a pretty small number. These were designed by a fellow named John Reich, who toiled at the mint for years and almost went back to his native Germany because he was not being recognized for his skill as a sculptor, and finally he was promoted to the head sculptor, to be the head sculptor of the mint, and he redesigned the coins, and this was one of them. They call them a busty for obvious reasons. And until, I believe it was Abraham Lincoln in 1909 was the first actual person depicted on American coins. Before that, it was always some depiction of liberty, and it was always a woman. So that's something different. And then the Indian head pennies of the 1850s, 60s on into the early 1900s, but again, it wasn't a specific person at that time. We're so used to seeing presidents on everything, we just sort of assume it's always been that way, but it wasn't. Now, a half cent seems silly to us now, but back then you have to realize that since 1832, the value of the currency, I think that inflation is something like 45 times what things were worth back then. So a halfpenny back then was worth something about like a quarter today. So they actually traded pretty frequently, and people did need them. And they are definitely of interest to coin collectors. Ironically, I am a coin collector. I found this in the bottom of a box when I bought a box lot, and I was all excited because I only had one halfpenny, and now I've got another one, and sure enough, I already had the 1832. It's the only one I had. So this is going to belong to someone else. In the condition it's in, I suspect that it will probably end up hammering somewhere around $50, but we shall see. Okay, the next, oh yes, here's something cute. Easter's on its way, and so we have, well, you could say the Easter Bunny, but he really looks like a real bunny because this is a Lladró, and one thing about Lladró is they really like to represent things in a more real way. And so this little bunny, he has bunny eyes. He kind of stares through you if you look at him. And this is called rabbit eating. He has some little applied flowers. He's sitting at a branch. He has the Lladró label on the bottom. This one is retired, meaning they don't make this anymore. And there is a mold number that's hard to see. I think it's 4772 that's impressed. I don't know that you'll be able to see it in this light, but it's down here. They often have mold numbers. The Lladró logo is a bellflower combined with an ancient chemical symbol of some sort. So if you ever wonder what that weird thing about the Lladró is, that's what it is. But I just thought the Lladró is such good quality, and this one's nice because it really does a lot of their pastel colors. It gets a little of the gray-blue, it gets a little of the gray, it gets a little of the green. The flower has a little bit of a pinkish hue, so it really is exemplary of the various color tones that Lladró made in a lot of their work. Now, Lladró has only been making sculptures since about 1956. They've only been in business since about 1953. And actually nowadays, the thing that they make the most of is lighting fixtures. They've gotten into high-end lighting, and they're getting away from the figurines, although I do believe they still make some. But it's not the crux of their business as much as it used to be. So I believe Lladró is an up-and-coming collectible because I don't think there's going to be as much production coming out in the future as there's been in the past. And I just thought the bunny was really cute, and I want to set him somewhere where he'll be safe. So he is up for bid and up for adoption, and unlike real-life bunnies, I don't have many, many, many of them, and they're not making many, many more as we speak. The next item I want to show you is just something different. If you look on here, it has a little bit of a cartouche, and you can see a little bit of something coming through it, and we'll show you what's coming through it because it's what is printed on the other side. This is an envelope, or a cover, as they say. It was never used because this is a piece of folding stationery, and this is from right about the time that Japan ends the dynastic era and starts to become a more modern nation and nationalizes. It's got Japanese writing at the bottom. But the neat thing when you open it up, there's what you saw coming through. This silver backed, it's like a very dense, like an aqua tint of a geisha with her baby. And then you open up the rest and ta-da, we're having a party. Look at that. So this would have been for a party invitation sometime in the teens or 20s. I'd say probably around 1920 because the guy's wearing a top hat. But look how much fun those people are having, and look how much fun this pop-up is with all the Japanese lanterns. It's three-dimensional. It's in really good shape because it was never used or mailed. There is one tiny, tiny hole right in the middle of the fold where the revelers are, and you can't really even see it. I have my thumb behind it. I was thinking maybe it would show up, but it's so small. It's probably an eighth of an inch, and it doesn't really seem to affect the overall quality of the piece. I just thought this was really fun. I haven't seen anything like it. I haven't seen anything comparable for sale, and I thought, let's give it a try. It's not going to be expensive, but it's just really neat, and pop-ups in general are very collectible. I always look for pop-ups, pop-up books. There's greeting cards that have pop-ups, and they're still doing pop-ups today, of course, but the old mechanical ones are like that are the ones that people really seek. Old mechanical Valentines that open like that. There's also a Jethro Tull album called Stand Up that came out in 1970, and the original issue of that has a big pop-up where the members of the band pop up out of the middle of the album, and that album cover is worth something like $30 just for the pop-up. So pop-ups are definitely a collectible item, and we'll see if somebody thinks that that's as interesting as I do. I found it in a big pile of paper in an estate in Washington State. And while we're on printed material, this is an interesting piece. This is the oldest thing I have to show you tonight, and I think that if I'm careful I can bring it in a little closer without a glare so that you can see it better. You'll notice someone is swinging from the chandelier and there's a big fight going on. This is a barroom brawl. This dates to 1822, and at the bottom it says, Dick and his valet showing fight at the Caveau, or Low Life in Paris. There was a fellow, a humorist named George Cruikshank, who did these, and this was done, this is an aqua tint, so it's an etching with hand coloring called an aqua tint. And this does date back to the 1800s. It was framed at a later time. I'm leaving it in the frame. The frame is nothing special, and it really has a little bit of damage in the corner, and this really shouldn't stay in this frame because it has old cardboard and old paper that will eventually mess up the print because of the acid in it. So it really should be taken out and remounted. I'm going to leave that to the new owner. But what's fun about this is it came from a book called Life in Paris. It was the sequel to a book the year before called Life in London. And these books were humorous, and they were meant to show not high society life in the capitals of Europe, but low society life in the capitals of Europe. And so that's why we're seeing this wonderful barroom brawl, which looks really, really vicious. Chairs are being smashed over people, and chandeliers are swinging, and people are fleeing to the corners and rolling around on the floor. So great fun. Dick was Dick Wildfire, who is one of the characters, and he and his group of cronies get in all sorts of trouble. So I thought that was really fun, and I do believe that those sell typically under $100, but somewhere in the mid-range below 100, so we'll see where that one goes. But for somebody who is a historic paper person or into humor, or just it's the kind of thing I could see somebody who has a lot of neat old engravings putting on the wall in some strange place to see if somebody notices that when they come into their house, because it's such a different scene. I just thought it was really charming and kind of fun in its way. I don't know if a barroom brawl is charming exactly, but you know what I'm saying. All right, we are at our penultimate piece of the evening, and it is this striking red vase. You may have seen this in one of my videos recently, because I did take one of these. I got two at the same time, and I took one of them to the show in Palm Beach, but this is the other one, and it is for sale. And somewhere on the bottom, here we go. At the very bottom, if you can see it, is a little sort of triangular mark. It's kind of hard to spot, because it's transparent to begin with, and then there's a lot of glare. But this says Orrefors, Sweden. It's especially hard to show on this piece because, but it's in that sort of glary circle at the bottom there. So Orrefors of Sweden. And this is called Red Squeeze, which is such a perfect name because it's a pinch face. And when they do a pinch face, what they do, this is cased glass, by the way, and you can tell it's cased because you see the clear, and the clear is over the red. If you look from the top, you'll see a clear band around the red. This is the beginning of how they make cameo glass, by the way, is they do a clear over a color, and then they carve back to the underlayment. And if they do multiple colors, it gets harder and harder to make. You don't see a pontil mark because this would have actually been blown into a mold. And so they would have finished off the top, and that's where the glass was coming from. So you don't see a mark where a blow rod was. But I'll put it on its side here. It's very sinuous, and it twists in all sorts of different directions because of the pinch. So you can make it have a wide low aspect, or you can make it have a high broad aspect with a waist at the bottom, depending on which way you want to display it, which makes it kind of neat in a house because you're going to get to see it from all sorts of different perspectives. It'd be nice on a center table where you see it all the way around when you walk around, and it's such a great color. It's just this really hot medium red. These were done by a designer named Lena Bergstrom. Lena Bergstrom worked for Orrefors near the end of their production. They were merged into Costa Boda, and then they were phased out. So as of 2012, no more new Orrefors. And that's why I thought this would be an interesting piece. Right now, I believe these are selling in the $75 range. I am used to seeing Orrefors as clear glass and not that much in color. So to find something in color, I think in the long run, if you're a glass collector and you like art glass, especially if you like Scandinavian modern glass, I do think colored Orrefors is something to be looking for now, because a lot of people are not aware that they are not producing anymore. And so I think it's a sleeper waiting to happen. And I'll be curious to see what the market thinks of that, or what one of you think of it. And that brings us to our final item of the evening, and yes, indeed, it is jewelry again. I really wanted to bring this out. I'm not sure how well the color will show here. I hope it shows better in my pictures. You might have to go to eBay to see, but I think this is going to bring it out a little bit better. And it's going to swing around a little bit until I can stabilize it. There we go. Okay, well, you get some idea of the color. This is a blue topaz. And let me get it in the center of the screen. I'll try to bring it forward a little bit. This is a very large blue topaz. It measures almost 3 inches, and it is in 18 karat gold wire. And that is a cubic zirconia mounted on the top. This was made in the late 1970s for the wife of a wealthy oilman in Casper, Wyoming. And she just loved it, and she's a friend of mine. She's about 90 years old now. She decided it was time to part with it because she wasn't wearing it anymore. She has a lot of great jewelry that she does wear all the time. She has not given up on jewelry, but she just decided that this piece maybe should go to somebody else. Let me see if we can... Yeah, there we go. Now I think we're getting it to show a little bit better. I picked a few things that were odd to show, but I wanted to show you. This is the back. It's faceted very deeply. Blue topaz comes in many colors, but its natural color is somewhere in the yellow to reddish brown phase. I'm going to see if we can get it up closer so you can see. Yes, there you go. See how nice the faceting is on this? It really shines and sparkles. In fact, I'm going to keep holding it this way and see if I can get that paper behind it again. Maybe you'll get a better view. So it's got great faceting, as you can see, and it is a deeper and truer blue color in person. This is called the Swiss blue. There's also a London blue. The way they get the blues, and interestingly enough, this is the state gemstone of the state of Texas, which is odd to me because the topaz mainly comes from Utah, Topaz Mountain in Utah, and other places around the world. But for some reason, this is the gemstone of the state of Texas. The way blue topaz is made is by bombing regular clear topaz stones with very intense gamma rays, and then they heat it, and that process, it's sort of like creating blue diamonds that they do now. That process turns the topaz into this blue color. So instead of the typical yellow to reddish brown that topaz is naturally, you get this really pretty blue. There's also a London blue, which is a deeper blue, and that just has to do with how they treat it. The wire is 18 karat gold, so this is a fairly valuable piece. I really expect that the value of this is somewhere in the $600 to $800 range. And so we do have a starting price that's pretty high on this as a result, but we're going to give it a try and see what people think, because I've noticed that blue topazes are selling very well, and this one's just so large. Let's see. The chain, by the way, is just a gold-filled chain that we put it on just to show. Okay. There we go. There it shows against my Adam's apple, but at least you can see what it looks like against skin. It is a really neat thing. I think that somebody will be very pleased to get to wear this, as she was for many, many years. And of course, now I'm holding it back near me and you see the blue a little bit better. So those are the 20 items that are on eBay now. I thank you very much for coming along with me and watching this. I have so much fun pulling aside and culling items every month to do this. I try to put things aside that are interesting and represent a broad interest of collecting. And so thank you very much for joining. I am very thankful again to my level 2 members who helped make this possible, and to all of my members. If you're interested in a membership, you can click join and find out more about how that works. And in the meantime, this is George the Antique Nomad signing off for now. And I will be working this week to get things packed and ready to ship on eBay. So thanks so much, and we'll see you again soon.